Welcome back to Fandom Empire Live, Episode 1, 2025. You'll start to hear some of our themes come back and see some of the old graphics in the next couple of weeks. I think things will slowly get back to some level of normalcy. We were going to have some Star Wars trivia tonight. We're going to hold that off till next week, just for logistical purposes. We weren't expecting a bombshell of a news report to come out of the Hollywood Reporter this evening. The news was already a lot to talk about today in terms of Star Wars, and now it's even bigger because it's more than just the one piece. If you don't just read the headline and you actually go into the article and pick through it, there's a lot there. I want to talk some WWE. I want to talk some AEW, maybe even a little bit of TNA, and get Johnny's insight on that stuff that's going on over there. Um, and then there's some general movie news and stuff. Nothing on the Halloween front. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I just haven't heard a damn thing. It's January, and I will say this. Normally, I would say it's January. Don't expect to hear much anytime soon, but there seems to be a lot of rumors swirling about a lot of horror franchises right now, whether it be on the small screen or the big screen. And I wouldn't be shocked if rumblings of something came out sooner rather than later. But again, given we got nothing in October, I don't know how much people want to write home about that and, you know, think that it's going to be a shoo-in. I just simply don't know. Um, but we're going to talk a little bit of Scream tonight as well. But first and foremost, the hosts for this evening. First up, Johnny, what's going on, man?
Uh, not a whole heck of a lot of anything. Still, you know, kicking off those last vestiges of the cold I've had since the new year. Other than that,
You sound a lot better than you did. That's for damn sure.
yeah, I feel a lot better than I did. At this point, it's mostly just the after effects, a little bit of sinus drip here and there, but it's 21 days later. I'm finally seeing the bright light at the end of the tunnel. But um, it's like you said, there's a lot of stuff for this cold, dreary Tuesday evening in January.
I got thinking about it, and I was compiling my Star Wars news items I thought we could dive into and talk about between the news and the rumors and everything. And like there was already the juicy stuff that Christian Harloff dropped, that Bestman Bulletin more or less verified himself. Um, and like it was already going to be a big let's dive into it. This is pretty huge, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But this reminds me of some of those old Wednesdays back in the day with Star Wars Wastelands as we're getting ready to come up to The Force Awakens or Rogue One specifically. And it would be not necessarily quiet, but you think you have your show set and something massive drops and it's like, oh, well, now everything has to take a backseat to this. And that's kind of what has happened today. Also joining us for this show, it's Randy. What's going on, man?
Trying to survive the cold because a week ago my furnace in my apartment decided to take a big fat crap, and luckily we're using the emergency heat, which has basically been running nonstop for a week. But it's been in like the mid 60s in here, which is manageable. But because of what you guys are experiencing up north and how it's kind of dipped down here and hit a bunch of us here in the U.S. with that nice little polar winds, all that fun stuff. It's finally got to the point where the complex needs to fix this stuff now because the temperature is finally getting to a point where it's not manageable and it sucks. So, but hopefully tomorrow, because I just got to keep hoping that in the next days it's going to get fixed, but whatever. At least there's a bunch of Star Wars news for a change. There's at least there's some good stuff happening for a change. So that helps offset things just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, we have a loaded show tonight for everybody. It's our first normal show of 2025, coming off of our Skeleton Crew review, although we will be diving into a Andor rewatch here soon, which will lead us into Andor season 2. And then the rest of this year will be just really what we come up with. That being said, I don't know if you two were into it, and I meant to bring this up last show, but last show was actually really good. We had a good, healthy discussion on a bunch of things, and I think we ended up doing like 90 minutes or something. But um, do you guys have any excitement at all for Daredevil?
Absolutely.
Oh, of course. I love the Netflix series, and the fact that this looks like it's going to kind of adhere to that really is exciting, just because, you're not used to Disney always giving into the violence, but this is one of those things where it's with Daredevil itself, the way Netflix did the series, it should be expected, especially when you're bringing back just about all the actors from the original series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite excited for it. Outside of I'd say Andor season 2 and probably A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's my third most anticipated show for this year. So I'm not saying we'll do full blown reviews on the channel, but if we're all current at the same time, there's definitely the possibility that we dive into some of that. I'm really excited for what they're going to be able to bring forward. I'm also a huge Punisher guy too, right? And we've seen Frank in the trailers, and just looking forward to getting a little more Punisher as well. So, um, that being said, we got some Scream 7 news right out of the gate, and I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed in the news that has come out about Scream 7. Heard forever ago when we were doing Tonight in Haddonfield that they were planning this Scream movie surrounded, you're based around Sydney Prescott and her family, and her kids are growing up. And it was really going to be not necessarily a road trip movie, but get away from your normal Scream settings. And at one point, Patrick Dempsey was written to have a significant part in the movie, and due to failed contract negotiations, Patrick Dempsey's character has been written out, and in comes, I forget the actor now.
Joel
Is
McHale.
Joel McHale? Thank you. Um, in comes Joel McHale to play the boyfriend of Sydney in the movie, um, who is also named Mark, but not the Mark from Scream 3, who's apparently the biological father to the kids of Sydney in Scream 7. So, what has happened here is whatever they intended for um, Patrick Dempsey's character is obviously off the table, and they've come up with Joe McHale as a replacement with the same name, which is kind of weird. But um, I I don't know, guys. I don't know how I feel about this. I really liked Scream 6 up until the last act, not even the full last act. I'd say like half of the last act, where I thought it got silly and stupid and did some of those stupid Scream tropes that I'm not a fan of. But I really liked the movie and some of the kills and the setting and what they did with it, considering there was no Sydney in the movie. Um, and now, you had the controversy with Melissa and her comments, and then um, who's the actress from Wednesday and Camp Cretaceous, and she's in the previous two Scream movies.
Jenna Ortega.
Jenna Ortega, yes. Um, she's believed to not be coming back. Same with Melissa, but the twins are apparently coming back, who are an integral part of their storyline. So they're going to combine the two, I guess. And when I first heard about this project, it seemed like the vision was far more clear and concise, and it made me excited about it, much in the way that I really got excited about Halloween 2018. The closer we got to release, it sounded like, everybody was on the same page, yet everybody steering the ship in the same direction. And it just seems like classic case of behind the scenes drama and trying to underpay your talent is going to. I don't want to say it's definitively going to hurt the story here, fellas, but given the drama that surrounded Nev Campbell with Scream 6, they wanted her. She didn't feel like the role or the pay was appropriate, and they've run into that same problem now here with Patrick Dempsey on Scream 7. Any surprise to you at all, Johnny? I know you and I have both seen Patrick Dempsey in other projects, obviously. But for me, whenever you have Dempsey in your movie, I think you're better off for it. I loved him in Thanksgiving.
I'm content with it. A lateral move for me at best. I love Joel McHale. I think he's a phenomenally underrated talent, um, as far as it goes. He adapts very well to the stuff he's written, and I love him. I think he's hilarious. I think he's awesome. So I'm for this, because I don't. I'm not as big on Patrick Dempsey. I think he works and he's fine, but he's kind of always the same. Every character he plays kind of ends up as McDreamy, and he's very one dimensional at it. Not that that's a bad thing, but it is very one dimensional, and I think that's something Joel brings to the table that Patrick doesn't, is that he's not. Everything is individual, it's unique, and he has that ability to morph and adapt and be different even when playing the same character. Uh, which is something I'm excited to see in this. So I'm excited for this. This actually makes me more excited than when it was Dempsey.
I cannot say I agree with that, but I'm happy that you're on board. Randy, how about you?
Well, kind of playing catch up with the movies, but I mean, to say that Dempsey's one note with a lot of his characters, I mean, I guess a lot. He's usually a pretty decent villain. I mean, I really liked him in Thanksgiving. So, but he's an actor. He's basically whatever role is written for him. That's what he's going to do. I don't think it has anything to do with um, how he portrays a character. I just think it's just they're like, well, we got this role for you, and this is what you're going to do in it, and it just ends up being cookie cutter. I mean, you want to go in the Wayback Machine, like one of his first acting gigs. Like you want to see him just not be McDreamy, McSteamy, whatever the hell it is. I never really watched that show. Just watch Meatballs 3 from '87, and to see it, it's yeah. Then you can get rid of that little vision in your head. But I mean, McHale's a good actor. I mean, I've enjoyed. He plays a really good dick. I've seen him in movies where he does that. But it seems like he's a good comedian too. So I don't see why it would hurt the movie. But also, obviously, they've had to go ahead and kind of mess with the storyline a little bit. And I know that's kind of got to be a bummer for a lot of people because they have set expectations for how the series should move forward. And obviously, without Patrick Dempsey, that's probably going to upset some people. But it's as long as it's well written and it's well acted, I don't see why it should hurt the movie at all. It could even make it better. You never know.
Want to shift gears here slightly, guys, and talk about a movie that I'm quite looking forward to. Um, I was a fan of the three that were released. I'm trying to remember what year they came out now. I think it would have been 2021 because I think they came out around the same time as Bo Burnham's Inside came out. And it was a trilogy of movies on Netflix. Fear Street movies. Johnny, I know you're an R.L. Stein guy. Just going back to those Fear Street movies, what did you think of them before we get into some prom queen talk?
I've still never watched them.
Really?
Really?
No, they just
Oh,
came out at a time when there was so much that I just never got around to it.
well, I think we found something we can do on the channel.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, they're a lot of fun. A
Hmm.
lot of fun. Prom Queen comes out this year, and I all I'll say is this is some people that we get some information from on the channel over the years that helped us out with a lot of Halloween stuff. Gave me the lowdown on um, the movie essentially, and without going into spoilers, but according to them, the movie plays out very well. They like the way it's written. However, there's some creative choices that I think will be discussed with people that are fans of the source material, and people tend to frown upon changing of source material, but I would say we're in a day and age where that's more common than not. So, I just really hope they deliver it. I think what made that first Fear Street release so successful for Netflix is you weren't just getting one movie, you were getting three movies released on back to back to back weeks. It was like this, event thing where this time around we're only going to get the one movie. However, there are three more Fear Street movies in development at Netflix. So clearly, this is a franchise that they believe in and are going forward with. Um, Randy, I believe you've seen the Fear Street movies.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little late to the party, but this past Halloween, I took it upon myself to just kind of sit down and finally watch them, just because I was looking for something different, and I liked how cohesive the stories were. I thought it was not they paid good homages to classic slasher films and different horror films. And I thought it was kind of cool to see faces you're familiar with, and with Netflix in general, seeing people from Stranger Things and whatnot. Um, but ultimately, I enjoyed it for the fact that it was just a really good story. When you combine all three movies, when I watched the first movie, I was like, wait, this is where we're ending it? No, 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 no. We're not supposed to end it here. I need closure, and that's when I got to see that everything kind of melded together as one. So it's kind of a bummer to think it's only a one and done for Prom Queen, but as you said, but you're saying there's more on the way. So hopefully they do something similar again down the road. But ultimately, well, you're right. It's a lot of fun, and I think that's definitely something we can do later this year.
I think, for me, I don't have a lot of familiarity at all with the Fear Street novels. I have a little more familiarity with the Goosebumps novels. I could be wrong. I think Johnny might have had the whole set when we were younger.
For a period,
Uh,
yeah.
um, it was, I liked a lot of those. Remember Ghost Camp, really liking that one. Um, I my hopes are high for Prom Queen. I just feel like it's got a lot to live up to in the success of the first three movies and the way that Netflix, marketed those first three movies and made them like this special event that you had to see. And obviously, we were still thick in the middle of the pandemic, and um, it just again, it was like this event thing. And I'm not saying they're not going to do that for Prom Queen or make a big deal about it as it's getting ready to come out. I just think it's one of those cases where it's going to be hard to live up to the hype of the first three movies. And I can't help but wonder if that's why they have another trilogy in development to follow up Prom Queen. So we'll see what happens in that regard. Kieran is not with us tonight. He's feeling under the weather. I know he wanted to make it. We were talking earlier, which is unfortunate because I would like to have him on here for this, despite the news not necessarily being good, depending on how you want to take it. There's two sides to this. Number one being they're looking to make a new Leprechaun movie. So there's that. There is at least interest in doing another Leprechaun movie, which, I can't say I give a flying rat's ass about it, but I know Some other people love Leprechaun. So that's part one. Is they're looking to make another Leprechaun movie. Part two is Warwick Davis was approached and rejected the pitch. Um, but it was listed as rejected the pitch for now. So maybe they find some common ground there. I don't know. I gotta be honest, fellas. Leprechaun doesn't do it for me. I could live the rest of my life without another one of these movies. How about you?
I never got into them. I never really liked them, so I don't care.
I mean, what's left to do? Is this leprechaun get stoned and boned? I mean, what the hell is this? It's at this point. I mean, he's been given the Jason treatment, going to outer space. He's been in a gang war. I mean, it's what more could they possibly do for this character unless they're doing a complete and total reboot and actually trying to make it, good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a Leprechaun guy myself. Um, hopefully for fans of the franchise, if they want to see Warwick return, that's something that they're able to come to terms on. But if I had to guess, they're trying to make it for next to nothing, which is really the only way to make one of those movies nowadays. So getting to the finish line on that might be easier said than done, depending on which route they go with it. I just want to take this moment to remind everybody that our Patreon is being revamped, and we will have a new outlook on what we're doing for content over on Patreon, beginning in the month of February. Um, so be on the lookout for that. Also, check out our channel sponsors that allow us to come on here and do our content, and even in our more relaxed days nowadays. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. So big shout out to Matt, who helps us out a ton here at the channel, Ryan from Colleague Nation, Jason from Backtrack Cinema, and Jesse from Jesse's Storytime Spectacular. Thank you guys for all that you do. Uh, Fellas, a little bit of a bombshell drop this afternoon. I have to say. Wasn't expecting this one. And we're gonna get into that momentarily. Um, Before we do, though, want to get some plugs out of the way now. Johnny, you are we getting close to returning to doing some Twitch here, man?
I'm hoping so. I think maybe next week. I think.
And Randy, what do you got going on?
Well, as we all know, NFL playoffs are in full swing, and so is the Sports Brew. And our episode that's up now, leading into the playoffs this past weekend. Obviously, we're up to the NFC and AFC Championship games. We'll be probably recording within the next couple of days, and that should be up relatively quickly too. But just Google Sports and Brew, and you should be able to find us, no problem.
Excellent stuff, excellent stuff. And we're that time of year. Super Bowl's not far away. Stanley Cup playoffs not far away. NBA playoffs not far away. Um, Good time of year to be a sports fan. WrestleMania season. When's AEW All in Texas this year? Is it still going to be your typical like August date, or are they moving that up?
I think it's going to be, if memory serves me correctly, I think it's still going to be like that same date that they were having the one in at Wembley. So
No, it's not.
no, they're moving it.
No.
I believe it's July 11th. I think.
Okay. Yeah, because the more space they have between that and All Out, it gives them a chance to actually build some storylines. So
Yeah, that's definitely been a problem, and I think if they allow themselves to have some breathing room, they'll be better off for it. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, some big news dropped today, and or some potentially big news, I should say. Sounds like it's basically done at this point, given all the places that are now coming out of the woodwork with it. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, good old Canadian boy Ryan Gosling is close to signing on to star in Shaun Levy's Star Wars movie, which will now release after The Mandalorian Grogu. At one point in time, people thought this movie, and not just people as in fans, but insiders, reporters, major trades thought that this movie was behind the Mangold movie. It would be behind the Filoni movie, and dare I say, there was even one other project that they thought this was behind. So, like, they were talking about this movie potentially being like a 2030 thing. And over the course of the last year, Shaun Levy has talked about it more than he should, considering Shaun Levy has not officially been announced by Lucasfilm as a writer and a director um, for a new movie, which we'll get into where we think that announcement might happen. But and that's the other big part of this is not only is Ryan Gosling close to signing on to star in a new Star Wars movie, to be directed by Shaun Levy. Those of you that might not be familiar with the name, Deadpool and Wolverine would be the most recent big success that he has had. There was prior rumors about Ryan Reynolds possibly being involved too. So, um, this is a different approach for Star Wars, in my opinion. They don't necessarily go with just unknowns, but they like to go with lesser knowns in their starring role. Johnny, you and I have been doing this a long time. We've done several casting calls on several episodes. I'm sure we've used Ryan Gosling in some of them at times. But how big is this? How big of a get is this for these guys, knowing, you know, taking the rose-colored glasses off, how much they've struggled lately?
I mean, for the average person, the name value is off the charts. There's no question. Ryan commands a presence over a certain portion of the audience that Star Wars is generally not very easy to tap into. Um, so it's interesting to see where they go with the story. What type of story it is, what kind of Star Wars movie it is. It's gonna be interesting. I can't say I'm excited. Personally, I'm not. I'm not a Gosling fan. I haven't been a Ryan Gosling fan since Breaker High. I'm old and Canadian, so I know what that is. But you know, I this doesn't do it for me as far as my interest level goes for seeing it, but it's going to be interesting to see everything around it. Like the media circus is going to be different than we've gotten for anything in ever in Star Wars as far as that goes. So I'm, you know, as a guy who has been part of the Star Wars, you know, podcasting fan community for a very long time, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what they can pull off here. I think this is a very high risk, high reward potential here for this, but there is also, it's a very sharp sword that they could just as easily, cut themselves with, playing with fire here. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm interested to see the story. I'm interested to see what kind of Star Wars film it is, because Ryan tends to do one of two films. They're either your action adventure type, or they're your rom com type. I'm interested to see what kind this ends up being. If they try and bring some of that into Star Wars, would be different for sure. And I wouldn't be against seeing some elements of that mixed with, the action adventure, which fits very nicely in with Shaun Levy, if I'm being honest. So I think there's great potential for something special here, but there is also great potential for something catastrophic here. I just don't know. I don't know which side of the coin it's going to land on, and we're not going to know that until we see it. But I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and I'm excited to see the circus that is about to unfold.
And you're right about the unfolding part, because the other part of this, Ryan Gosling, A-lister name in Hollywood nowadays. I am a huge Gosling fan, by the way. Blade Runner 2049 is fan-fucking-tastic, and you might be a big Harrison Ford fan, but Ryan Gosling carries that movie. The Notebook, fantastic. Love that movie. Great movie. There's another one, Fall Guy was fantastic. We watched that this year. And there's one where he's on this bike, and it's like an action-heavy movie, and can't remember what it's called, but I don't think it's Drive Angry. Maybe it is. I don't remember. Um, but I've liked him in a lot of things. Breaker High, geez, that's going back. Remember the Titans. He's been in a lot. To me, it's a different approach for Lucasfilm to go with okay, we're going to go the A-lister route. Okay, now they'll go and get a star or two, and they'll be a part of like the supporting cast, and your main characters will be lesser knowns. But the little bit that I've listened in on this evening, it sounds like it's Gosling's movie, um, which good for them. Um, we mentioned on a previous episode that most of Shaun Levy's projects also include another Ryan. How big do they go with this? Do they dare go and, yeah, we're going to do a Star Wars movie, and guess what? It's going to star Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling. And then to me, it's about, well, what kind of story have you crafted to go, we're doing it with these two? Star Wars is, has so many great stories in their history books that pair two characters together in buddy cop scenarios. Some of the more recent stuff includes Thrawn and Vader, or Thrawn and Anakin. So, like, to me, there's just so much potential here. But the other piece of this that, again, isn't in the headlines, but is in the article, is that if a deal is struck, which it's believed there will be one, um, this thing's going to film this year. They're talking about this thing filming in 2025, in the fall of 2025. So we're talking about a movie that would likely be done filming before our asses are in the seats to see The Mandalorian and Grogu. And if Star Wars can do that and they believe in that project, all of a sudden you're not talking about woulda, coulda, shouldas, what ifs, maybes. Maybe we'll get this, maybe we'll get that. You're talking about, okay, we have two movies that are definitely going to come out. And they need that. Whether they hit or miss at this point, they need that. They need to stop with the this is coming or that is coming, and then it never comes. To me, the news that, the Shaun Levy movie, it has now moved all the way up to shooting this year. I think people should be excited about that. Despite him having worked on this thing since late 2022, I think if they're at a point where they're ready to film, knowing how Kathleen Kennedy works, that tells me they are full steam ahead and believe in this project. And Randy, I do want to get to you in a second. I'm going to get you to just sort of give your thoughts on everything, but I want to go back to Johnny for a second. Uh, Dude, we've been doing this 10 years. There is not very often where I'll sit here and go, yeah, they believe in what they're doing, given the history that we've seen. But I can certainly say with them going from this movie potentially coming out in 2029, 2030 to potentially filming this year and being your 2027 50th year anniversary movie, that's big. That's the other thing here, guys. is the release date would be the 50th anniversary date. Let the speculation begin. Randy, thoughts on everything? Sorry, Johnny. Your thoughts first on for them to go full steam ahead on 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 a project to push it that far ahead. It just doesn't seem to happen. We've had all the opposite. You know, this movie gets announced, that movie gets announced, this series gets announced, then something happens, and it's like, oh, it might happen years from now, or it might never happen. What are your thoughts on the fact that this could happen very soon?
In an era where nothing has been as promised, as far as that goes, it's a big swing, and it further magnifies what I said about both, success and failure for this. It makes the stakes even higher, even more. If we're pushing this forward several years, and pushing it up that far, that fast, a this is further along than we thought it was. For them to be this close to go to filming, to go to production, we are a lot further in this project than we even remotely thought we were, or they're fast tracking everything so much that we are destined for Solo Part 2, um, which is a legitimate fear. If this isn't as ready as it should be, and they're pushing it forward faster and harder because, they have managed to, strike oil in the backyard like the Beverly Hillbillies, you're moving to Beverly Hills and you're doing it right now. You're not waiting. So it's either going to be success or it's going to be failure. And hopefully it's success in that they are further along than we thought they were. And things are more ready than they thought they were. And it was just lining up availability for Shaun Levy and getting the cast in line and all of that. And that's what was causing the delay, not, writing or pre-production or things like that. It was just getting the stars to align, and the stars have aligned in a perfect way for them, that they have been able to push this forward. Then that's fantastic. I'm excited for this. But on the flip side of that coin, we could be looking at Solo, where they're pushing things too hard, too fast. They're not going to get what they want. Things aren't as ready as they think they are, and things are going to go off the rails, and they're going to go off the rails fast. Which, if that happens, there is no salvaging the current iteration of Disney Star Wars. You can't do it. You can't save it from that. If you fail so spectacularly with an A-list star like Ryan
But
Gosling,
potentially two, given it's a Shaun Levy project.
mhm.
Like if you get them both and this thing still flunks, like I hate
Oh
doing
yeah,
the
but that's
pessimistic look at it because I'm excited for it. But like if a Ryan Reynolds Ryan Gosling movie comes out, directed by Shaun Levy, written by Shaun Levy and company in Star Wars, and it doesn't do well, yeah, it's time.
I think that would say more about the fan base as a whole than it would anything else. That we're it would essentially, I don't want to say the end, but it would probably be the end of Star Wars as we know it, because there's no saving that. You would have everything you need to have a mainstream success, and if you couldn't pull that off, or even something salvageable, that's it. It's over. Put a fork in it. It's not. You've tried to put it at the Marvel level, and it's not there anymore. It's not even remotely close to that. It's time to put it in the mothballs and let it sit on the shelves for a while. Keep it on your Disney Pluses and your animated side where it succeeds, but you know the budget's gonna drop, everything's gonna drop, and it's going to be a Disney also ran, not a main focus. You'll see it in the parks, but you won't see it in theaters. You'll see it on the animated side, but you're not going to see the live action. If that happens, then that's it. Stick a fork in it as we know it. It's done. The party's over. It's time to go home.
I have a theory on what is happening, but I'm gonna wait till after Randy gives us his thoughts on everything. Randy's been doing this show with us for about a year and a half now. Did Ahsoka with us, did Acolyte with us, did Skeleton Crew, is going to be doing Andor 2 with us. We've talked about a whole lot of negative. We've also talked about positive. I think we're pretty fair. We call it like we see it. Randy, your thoughts and feelings on this breaking news tonight?
So I've enjoyed Ryan Gosling as an actor. My first exposure to him was actually Murder by Numbers, which I thought was a fantastic movie. Um, but
Is
I
that
mean,
the one with him and Hopkins?
um, Sandra Bullock.
He does one with Hopkins. It's no, is that Fracture? I don't know. He does one with Hopkins where he's a lawyer, and it's just amazing.
I mean, he's got great range as an actor. Can do the romantic stuff, can do comedy, can do action, can do suspense. So to get someone like him, and potentially to have someone like him in a movie, in any movie, especially let alone a Star Wars movie, is an amazing get, regardless. And if it's possible to bring in Ryan Reynolds, who has had quite the resurgence in his career, I mean that's pretty golden if you ask me. The potential right there uh, can go in any direction. I think one of the reasons they're fast tracking this thing is because, like Johnny said, everything aligned. They're probably in, probably working with Levy about going, okay, we have these dates. Can we do this? He's probably like, I've got these projects all lined up. If we don't start trying to do it here, you're not going to have me for X amount of years because I'm just going to be backlogged and doing
Bang
all
on,
this
man.
stuff.
The Hollywood Reporter article actually points out that Levy's basically ready to pass on a project in order to get this thing going this year. This is the type of motivation they need, in my opinion.
But what this also tells me is the story's done. He's got a script. He's just waiting on the green light. And I feel like this is the perfect storm to do something like this. Uh, is it exciting? Yes. I'm ready for something like this. I'm ready for, and I think it's awesome the idea of bringing in top tier talent for a change, because sometimes names can drive a film. Obviously, with
Avengers, like, come on, let's be honest. How many people
yeah,
watch Avengers because of who they cast in those roles? I love the story.
mm-hmm.
A lot of the MCU is a lot of fun. Looking forward to Doomsday. Looking forward to, I can't even remember what the other one's called. Looking forward to more Spider-Man films. But a lot of it's who they cast, and Star Wars has never seemed to wanted to go that route until not this Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Jude Law's a big name. Jude
Oh,
Law,
for sure.
say what you want about the kids, but Jude Law carried a lot of that show.
He did. And you could tell how comfortable the kids got as the series went on and found their voice as actors. And eventually you fell in love with the kids as well. So, but yeah, you need for something like that, when you're bringing a bunch of unknowns, you do need at least that one big name that is going to tie it all together, who's going to put butts in the seats. George Lucas knew that when he did the original Star Wars, in getting Peter Cushing and Alec Guinness, who were big name actors at the time. Obviously, Harrison Ford was little well known at the time, but he'd had some experience. The rest, bunch of unknowns, and we saw where that went. So the idea of, I can only imagine what Shaun Levy has in store for us if he gets the green light. Just to the fact that we've seen his take on action, he's phenomenal with it. So to put that into Star Wars, I mean, I could see Gosling and Reynolds, if we get both, as basically a bounty hunter duo traversing the galaxy doing crazy shit, which would be fun. And maybe that's the point of what we're missing in some of these Star Wars movies, or some of the projects we've seen, is that lack of fun, because we had all that in the original trilogy. There was a bunch, there was levity, there was fun, but there, you got excited. And maybe that's something that as we saw with the sequel trilogy, we're kind of missing some of that. There were some cool moments, there were some cool visuals, but a lot of that excitement you get when you watch Star Wars just wasn't there. And and kind of like what we thought with the accolades, like it started good, but then it just kind of, and then it finished strong. Skeleton Crew, it was fun. It was a fun family adventure. It's one of those series you're like, I don't mind sitting down with kids and watching because they're going to have a little blast with it too. I think that's what there's potential is. It's something that can be fun, that we can take these well-known actors and put them in Star Wars, kind of like we did with Jude Law, putting him in Star Wars and just showing that it can be just a fun world, with some serious takes. But obviously we're not going to know until we get that first synopsis, that first trailer. But it's exciting to think about that if this works, if you can find someone like Levy who is just ready to go, has a script, has an idea in mind, has everything in his head ready to go, has the people he wants that would make his story come to life in the best way possible. Take a chance. I mean, what else have you got to lose other than the fact that we're currently at a relatively low point with Star Wars, which is a bummer. We're seeing some signs of life here and there with some of the shows and the potential for the Mandalorian Grogu movie and what Filoni has planned. But when was the last real home run? We need that home run. We need that big hit, not for nostalgia's sake, not like what The Force Awakens did. We need that original idea that's what got us into Star Wars in the first place. And I think the potential's there. It's just Disney needs to pull the trigger and say, let's do it. Let's go for this.
Yeah, I think it could be that. And I don't think Mandalorian Grogu is going to be the home run that some people are already making it out to be. I'm really curious to see how far Grogu can take that movie. I just think, this thing that was designed to be a season 4 that's been morphed into a movie, and they've been able to obviously make some changes based on how Ahsoka season 1 was received, potentially Skeleton Crew as well. But I I don't know. I'm not saying Mandalorian Grogu is going to fail. I think it'll make money, but I think it'll be more of Star Wars is back on the big screen. I don't think you're going to get a home run out of
No,
that
it's not
movie.
going to be $1 billion film, but
I do
it's still
think
good. It's going to make its
next
money.
one could be that.
Mm-hmm.
And to put on my tinfoil hat here, here's 2 things I'm going to throw out. Number 1, I believe that this is the Rey movie. So there was 2 takes on the Rey movie. There was one that centered around her, where she was going to be the lead character, or she had become the lead character. That's what the story had shifted into. Damon Lindelof, who had done Watchmen for HBO, I believe it was on, and some other things, had originally taken the first pass at the script, and it was going to be another character, 2 other characters to be specific, that would be the leads in that movie, and Rey would be a supporting character. I think that this is where it's going to go. Otherwise, like, is the Rey movie not kind of just gone at this point? Like, the other thing is Shaun Levy doesn't want to. He's made it clear he doesn't want to be like person B in a trilogy. He wants to craft his own story. That doesn't mean he can't use Rey. He's already been rumored to potentially be doing that. So I do think we might be seeing a Ryan Gosling Star Wars movie from Shaun Levy that also features Rey in it. That would be my first prediction. My second one that I feel more confident about is they're going to publicly announce this thing and make a massive deal about it. over in Japan, where they are doing Celebration this year. It's a market that they desperately need to get a hold of and do better in, that and China. They need to do better in both of those markets. They don't get the um, success that like an Avengers does, or some of those comic book movies do over there. So like, and that's not far away, by the way, guys. That's like a little more than 2 months away. So those are my predictions. I think that the movie, in some way, will be this new take on this new. I don't know if it'll still be a new Jedi Order movie per se, but I do believe Rey will be featured in the movie. I do believe this will be a movie that takes place 15 or 20 years after what we've already seen and doesn't really need to build off of any of that, a new beginning, if you will. And I do believe, honestly, if you have the type of star power behind this thing, that this is prediction number 3 that I feel the least confident about. And I want your guys' takes on them all. Um, but if you have Shaun Levy, say what you want, but given from 2024, hottest director in Hollywood at the moment. Um, Obviously, kind of hard to miss when you're working with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, which was wanted for the better part of 2 decades. Um, to be fair, but I believe if you have Ryan Gosling, if you have Shaun Levy, if Daisy Ridley's going to be in this movie, I also think Ryan Reynolds is a shoo-in. By the way, I'm not saying to be a star in the movie, but I believe in some way Ryan Reynolds is going to be in this movie. If it's the Simon Pegg Unkar Plutt thing, or a droid voice or something like that. I just don't see, knowing how big of a Star Wars fan he is, and knowing how many of Levy's projects Ryan Reynolds is in, I don't see him being like, okay, I'm not going to do this one because my face is too noticeable. They'll find some way to have him in there. I'd prefer in like a starring or supporting role, but we'll see about that. But I believe this is going to be episode 10. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a rumor about a potential episode 10 a couple of months before Christmas. And I think that's where we're going with this. This is going to be a new beginning to Star Wars. The thing I'd like to see, though, is just because you do episode 10 doesn't mean you need to follow it up with 11 and 12. I love the Batman. I hate that, we're seemingly waiting forever for the Batman part 2, but I'd rather them do part 1 and then figure out the story to part 2 while considering part 1 than, do what they did with the sequels. Johnny, your thoughts on a Celebration announcement, um, and this potentially being what was the Ray movie at one point in time? Do you think there's some connection there?
I they may have sort of, I don't want to say merged it into that, but it might end up being that. Obviously, I don't think it started that way, but I think as things have sort of taken left turn after left turn after left turn, if there are contracts signed with Daisy, which one would assume that there are, you do have to do something with that, or you're paying for nothing, which is you know corporate stupidity at its finest. That I think
They've
they,
grown accustomed to doing that.
but well, yeah, but it's. I wouldn't be surprised if it had morphed into that. Obviously, like I said, I don't think it started out that way, but could this end up being episode 10? I don't know. It depends on what it is. You know, what the story ends up being. Um, could it end up being sort of like the de facto episode 10 without being that in name? Okay. Being that it is coming right now, seemingly in the anniversary year. It, I don't. It's going to be interesting to see. As for Celebration, absolutely. There's no way you don't make a big deal out of this in Tokyo and make this your centerpiece thing, where uh, you can capitalize most on this. I think absolutely. this is going to be a big deal there. It's going to be formally announced there, and I think we're going to get uh, more of a glimpse into what it's going to be. Obviously, I don't think we're going to get anything like teasery, anything like that, but I could see a possibility of sort of introducing us to Gosling's character type situation, where we see him in a preliminary costume type circumstance. I could see something like that happening, and giving us a name or some basic details about the character to sort of wet our whistles and prime our appetites for this project. Um, so it's going to be interesting. I would be more shocked if it's not a big deal at Celebration, here in a couple of months than if it is, because of that fact that, like you said, the Asian market is one that Star Wars doesn't have a foothold in to make it the global powerhouse it could be, that everyone hoped it would be. It needs to it needs success in that market for it to hit that, you know, uh, mark that a lot of fans have always expected it to hit. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see what we get, what we see, what we hear at Celebration here in a few months. And I'm excited for that. It's something tangible, something that we can be excited for at Celebration, which is something that I didn't really expect because, let's be honest, a lot of the announcements we've got at Celebrations recently have been field goals at best, and by that I mean they've come to
Here's this
nothing.
thing that you'll never get.
Exactly. So, like, they've been kickoffs that end up as touchbacks. Nobody gets to play the ball on most of these kicks that we get at Celebration. So it'll be nice.
You know what Celebration has turned into? Do you remember the Canadian TV show that we used to watch as kids? It's a game show. It was on YTV. It was called Uh-Oh. It reminds me of when the guy with the big wacky hair would take
Wink
you into the
Yahoo.
tube and you'd get spilled by the Punisher or whatever.
Yep.
And that's what it feels like Lucasfilm's done to us for the last little while.
It's definitely Uh-Oh. Which is the name of said Canadian show for those of you non-Canadians who don't know what we mean when we say Wink Yahoo and the Punisher and getting slimed. And it's a thing. It existed up here. YouTube it. It's hilarious. It's a
Is
double
that what
dare.
turned in? Is that what turned into? You can't do that on television in the U.S. I mean,
It was
that's what
very
it
much
sounds
sort
like.
of like the Canadian version of Double Dare.
Okay.
For the American audience who understand that. It was very Double Dare in its presentation. So if you watch that, you get a good idea of what it was. Only we had a Punisher who was literally like a medieval executioner in the black hood with the axe, and he would drop goo on you, and it was hilarious. I loved it. Wink Yahoo. But yeah, that's an accurate description. We're in the tube, and we get the question wrong every time we're at Celebration, and we get slimed with these announcements that never come to be anything.
Randy, any
Thinking about it, I mean, it has to be Celebration, right? It just has to be the big announcement. But also, if you're going to film this year and you're really going to push for that 50th anniversary, release, that's huge. So you have to make that big of a deal out of it. You have to be like, it's, I mean, 50 years for most things. It's amazing. It's amazing that it's crazy to think that Star Wars is almost 50 years old. It really is. But here we are, and it's the perfect time to do it. I liked your idea of incorporating Rey into the movie. I think it works, especially if you're trying to gauge people's interest in Rey as a character versus what we saw in the sequel trilogy. Because I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of not reinvent her, but to show how much she's grown and that she's not, the Mary Sue that everybody tries to say she is, but it's just the whole idea of she has kept up with her training. She has become powerful in her own right. Um, and I'm going to say this: it's like it is a complete and utter miss if, say, you get Ryan Reynolds and you don't turn him into a smart ass, you know, gambler or scoundrel or something. Um, I feel that's like a huge miss if you don't do that, just because he plays that part so well. Um, but that's just me. I feel like that would be a lot of fun in the movie because it's something we normally don't see in Star Wars. Um,
I wouldn't
I
mind
guess
an arrogant Force user.
that too. That would be amazing. Um,
Han with a
but
lightsaber,
could you
not
imagine?
cutting open tauntauns.
But could you imagine just part Anakin, part Han Solo in terms of like Anakin when he's early on in his Jedi training? That would be
I just
maybe
realized you're just describing Jod, right?
A little bit.
a little bit, but not as much of an asshole in the end. Even though we did see parts where he genuinely felt for the kids, but it's just I'm talking like just full on Ryan Reynolds being a Jedi. There you go. That's all you need to say. Or Deadpool as a Jedi. I mean, we can go that route if you really want to, but no, I think you're right. Celebration's the time to do it, especially if you're pushing for 27 for the release date. It makes all the sense in the world. It's like, I mean, obviously for some of us, it's like, here, take my money. But you're right. Japan, China, that area has always been usually where Star Wars makes a lot of its money. And recently in the
No,
past, well,
no, it's where it hasn't made its money. It's where they can't get
I've seen them
uh,
do pretty
a,
well.
a
Like in the,
foothold.
I mean, not as well as obviously here, but I've seen them do well over there. Just not like, some movies where it's like, oh look, it's Transformers, yay, let's go make it $1 billion movie. These movies are horrible. We don't care. It's Transformers. I mean, I've seen that happen, which is ridiculous. But um, so we'll see. I think. I mean, either way, it's exciting. It's exciting to think about the possibilities, and I really just hope it comes to fruition. It's time. It's time to take a shot in the dark. Let's do it. Let's do something that's completely and totally unexpected from Disney for a change. Let's actually shock the world for once.
Well, that's kind of my next question here is, do you think that someone at Disney, Uncle Bob's still there, did someone finally say, you know what, go hire yourselves a star, you know? Let's switch up the formula. Let's do this a little bit differently. And it's such a weird parallel. Maybe not even a parallel, but opposites. Think about it. The Mandalorian and Grogu right now is going to come out in about what, 16 months time. Um, and then this movie you'd be looking at, uh, you know, 28 months time, roughly, maybe a little more, sometime in 2027. Um, I I like, for me, there needs to be, you know, Randy mentioned it earlier, a home run, but like the one movie that we're getting, the stars are a masked man who will not be played by the same guy that's voicing him. Pascal might get a little bit of face time in the movie, but it's not going to be much. And we've heard of, Sigourney Weaver's in it, and there could be some other guys popping up, but we really don't have a definitive cast list of who's your stars and who are your supporting actors in The Mandalorian and Grogu. And now this movie that's going to apparently follow that one up, all we know is there's an A-lister attached. So it really is two very different ways about going about it.
Just for clarification, there was some discussion of the numbers. I pulled up the Chinese numbers for Star Wars in the Disney era. The peak was Episode 7, which grossed 125 million, and the returns are diminishing drastically after that. Rogue One finished under 70. Last Jedi 42.
Yeah.
Solo under 16 and a half. And Episode 9, $20 million in the Chinese box office. So, yikes.
Yeah.
Horrible numbers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, Force Awakens Nostalgia Act, obviously. I love the movie. But, you know, they were able to do some good numbers with that one, but they wanted all their numbers around that for overseas. And now it's like they barely got a footprint over there. So I do think A-list talent helps with that sort of thing.
Absolutely. It can never hurt to have A-list talent who are, bankable worldwide, and that is something Ryan is. He's bankable on both sides of the gender spectrum, which is something that, again, Star Wars has never really had someone with that ability, really, ever, without spending too much time thinking about it. So
Seemingly a good guy, too, that is rarely involved
yeah,
in any sort of uh, drama, which is important for nowadays. Hard worker, good
yep,
actor. You know, it's a good pick in my opinion. You know, obviously that we're saying that without knowing one what the movie's about, what era it's in. You know, there's a lot of missing holes here, but you hear, you know, Ryan Gosling, Shaun Levy, and a potential Ryan Reynolds, and all of a sudden, your ears are standing up, and you're waiting to hear the next details. As I'm sure everybody else is out there, and we will bring them to you all when we have more to discuss on that front. Um, what was going to be the big Star Wars talking point for us on this show, relegated to Star Wars topic number 2, is Natalie Portman, Hayden Christensen, and Ewan McGregor are reportedly, I don't know if returning is the right way to word this, even though I've seen everybody else word it that way. Returning to Star Wars for Ahsoka season 2. I did miss Ariana Greenblatt's name in there, who was in Barbie and played young Ahsoka in season 1. Um, this feel like, as cool as it would be to see something, some sort of Anakin Padme post life closure to everything, which, you know, may make some eyes roll. Um, this certainly feels like it's set up to be, okay, we're going to do the Clone Wars again in Ahsoka season 2, but we're going to go a couple steps further than we did in that episode and kind of give you like a, if I had to guess, probably a full blown episode that's going to be Clone Wars to have this much talent involved in it. Randy, want to send it over to you first for your thoughts. Do you think that's where this is heading with the news of Ewan McGregor joining Ahsoka season 2, Natalie Portman more than likely joining alongside the returning Hayden Christensen and Ariana Greenblatt?
I mean, we have to be. I mean, it makes sense to do that. And the thing is since we know that the Mortis gods are going to potentially be involved because that's what Balin Skull was going after. That shot we saw at the end of season 1. You have to wonder: are we going to get like an actual live action version of that encounter? Because we know that some of the visions Anakin had involved Padme. We know that Ahsoka was there. So it's like if you have all 4 there, it's like you have to wonder, since we know Balin Skull is going to try to end the Force where it began, because that was this whole big spiel. Do we actually retread some of that stuff that we saw in the Clone Wars that was just flat out excellent, an excellent arc that they had? I mean, that's possible, but also there are moments we know that all 4 shared. I think it was with season 7 where Anakin under not Anakin but Obi-Wan pretty much catches them sneaking around. It's like there's so many different things they could potentially do here that it's exciting just to know that we're going to get to see some more of the Clone Wars, and now that Ewan McGregor gets to get involved with that himself, since Hayden got the chance to do it in season 1. I mean, that was a lot of fun to see.
Johnny, any thoughts?
I think it's going to be interesting to see specifically how Natalie plays into it. Um, Hayden and Ewan obviously have easy outs, both in that they can appear as Force ghosts and in flashbacks. So, uh, with Natalie, there's sort of just one option, really, in flashbacks, unless they go down sort of with the storyline we started with Balin and you know and the deities of old could lead us towards the world between worlds, which could allow Natalie to play in that. But of all the characters
Let me
possible,
ask you that. You're a guy who has a problem with young Anakin being a Force ghost.
well, I I,
Hey,
I don't and I do, if that makes sense. I don't like the change they made to the end of Jedi because I don't like a lot of George's changes that affect the story, I guess. I don't like I said last week the idea of the Force Ghost appearing as the memory of the receiver of the vision. You know what I'm saying? Like it would
it
make
would make
sense. It would make sense for Ahsoka to see Anakin as Hayden, not as old man who's dying and decrepit, because she never saw him that way. So
Same can be said for Obi-Wan.
exactly. So it makes well. I mean, it's safe to assume she might have assumed, seen old Ben at some point in in that regard. But either way,
Ewan's also old enough now that I think if they want to go all out, they can do a decent age up of him into a
put him in a white
lookalike
wig and a
Alec
beard, and he
Guinness.
can be
Yeah,
Alec Guinness. I don't mind that. I wouldn't hate it. But
yeah.
besides that, I can deal, and I approve of the idea of the Force Ghost being the vision of the person receiving the vision. I have no issues with that. If they want to circle around and say that, I have no issues with that because it makes sense. The Force manifesting itself in the vision that the receiver of the vision would understand. If Ahsoka came face to face with Darth Vader circa episode 6, she's not going to recognize him, like immediately. So it takes away that sort of familiarity. Whereas if she sees a vision of Anakin, it's as her master. Perfectly acceptable. So I don't, you know, I don't. I'm okay with new Force Ghosts being younger because I can safely sort of, I can say that in my head, that's how Force Ghosts work. And it makes sense. It's not contradictory to anything in the canon. They've never fully explained Force Ghosts in such a way that definitively says no, that's not the way it works. It works this way. So you have that ability to interpret it, which is why I'm okay with Hayden and Ewan showing up in Ahsoka as Force Ghosts, because that's how she'd recognize them, not Hayden showing up at the end of Jedi, because Luke, to that point, would never have seen, to my knowledge anyway. I don't remember the books to that point, but to my knowledge, he had never seen Anakin Skywalker in any form to that point. I don't think he'd seen young Anakin at any point prior to
That
that.
happens. That
So,
happens later.
yeah, so he wouldn't have that visual to call upon to see his father as a young man and know that's his father. Like it makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like even me, like I see pictures of my dad as a young man, and it's like sometimes you have to look at it for a second and be like, wait, that's you. Like
That being said, I mean, it or- it's it's so hard because like a lot of people will, and I'm talking like your normies, your average viewer will watch A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi and go, "Oh, well, they were fun 3 movies. What they do take course over the span of like a year, and maybe two, and it's like, no, the original trilogy takes place over the span of half a decade, 5 years, people, and so like I think it's certainly plausible that at some point during that time Luke would have came across records being a part of the Rebel Alliance, um, where he would have seen something of Anakin because of how vital Anakin was to the Jedi Order and the Rebel Alliance's take on it, and they definitely had a hold of some things. But to expect a normal audience member to piece that together, that's not happening. Um, I think the thing I struggle with is here, and I know not to expect it because I don't think Dave Filoni would ever go this far. But I sit here and I go, okay, well, all people are supposed to be part of the living force, just not everybody has control of it. So theoretically, there should be a way to see your loved ones after they've passed on in some way, shape, or form. If you're a force user, a technique, something, not every day or anything, but certain, special occasions. So I sit here and go, it'd be nice after everything they went through, Darth Vader, Revenge of the Sith, the original trilogy, for Anakin and Padme to have that closure, right? I think that would be awesome. But then there's another side of me that goes, that man committed mass genocide. Part of me thinks it's kind of okay, well, it's kind of
Multiple
like,
times too.
yeah, it's kind of like his duty in his afterlife to be there to help and guide, younger Jedi or just Jedi, period, whenever he possibly can for the rest of eternity and not ever have that moment with Padme. And that is his price for doing what he did.
Then he really fucked up on his grandson.
Hmm?
Yeah, just a
If
wee
his
bit.
penance is to, visit young Jedi and keep them off his path, he really did his grandson a dirty by
Yeah,
not showing up and be like, "Hey, you idiot! Don't be me."
That's not
yeah.
me talking to you. That's Palpatine.
It's one of those moments where, like, I love the books that get written in between the movies, and they did a fantastic one, Shadows of the Sith, which happens between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, which deals with a little bit of that, but you never really get a definitive explanation. So it's kind of like you can tell they start to go, well, this potentially was going on, and why Anakin couldn't be a better guide to Ben during that time. You know, um, I don't want to spoil the whole book for people, but there's this moment where Luke is in a Sith temple essentially, um, and I want to say this is 17 years after Return of the Jedi. Um, but Luke is in a Sith temple, and he's fallen into a trap, and he's gonna die, and it's Anakin that saves him. Um, but then by the end of it, something happens to where like Luke and Anakin can't communicate. Something is like blocking them off, and we've never had like a follow up book or anything, and clearly we've had no follow up movies to Rise of Skywalker. So
It just goes back to the point of how chaotic the sequel trilogy was, where so many of these things that we can sit here and be like, well, why didn't this happen? Like, why couldn't Anakin have shown up for Ben and been like, hey, idiot, stop that right now. You're going to be me and not in a good way, which could simply have been explained by him showing up in, say, episode 9. Once Ben, turns away from the dark side and been like, it's about time you stopped listening to him and started listening to me. Type situation. Like Palpatine's been blocking me up from you for 20 years. Hello? Stop this. Like, if only we could have got something smart like that.
we get
Maybe.
petty Force Ghost Anakin who goes, You know, oh, I just lost it. I lost my train of thought. I had it.
You know,
It
if
was
you'd
there.
listened to me 15 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Oh, you know what it could be though is you get petty Force Ghost Anakin, who's just like, so let me get this straight. You're not going to tell Ben about me? Yeah. We've made the decision that it's just not a good idea to tell him that you were Darth Vader. Well, this is gonna end poorly. Good luck. Have fun.
Anakin being the one to sit in front of Luke and be like, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and see what becomes of him. And then you can just have petty Anakin looking at his son like, I told you. I told you. What did I tell you? What did I say was going to happen? Swap him out for Yoda in those later scenes, and he can just sit there and be like, so not telling him about me was a good idea, right?
Bet you won't do that again. We could easily rewrite the sequel trilogy and make it infinitely better.
I think a trained monkey with the typewriter could make a better sequel than the trilogy we got, which felt like it
Maybe.
was written by a group of monkeys.
A quote said by every Star Wars podcast known to mankind.
A quote said by every Star Wars fan in existence.
I bet I could write a better script than that.
Um, we'll have to wait and see how it all works out. But for me, again, I think part of the punishment for committing mass genocide is you probably shouldn't get your closure at the end. You
Probably
should,
not.
you know, as cool and heartwarming as that moment would be, feels like something that should be left more to fan fiction. Give me whatever story you're going to tell me of Padme, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin getting trapped on some mission during the Clone Wars. That feels like the direction they're going with it.
And would make sense because I mean, how many episodes do we have something similar to that?
Yeah.
Throw in Satine, we can really have some fun.
Ooh.
I don't think we're watching the same Ahsoka series, pal.
Ooh.
Someone
uh,
downloaded It's Not Ahsoka Season 2.
so yeah, there's been a ton of Star Wars just rumors and news the last couple of weeks. It's a hotbed right now. Obviously, we got the Rory McCann stuff, who played the Hound in Game of Thrones. Will be taking over as Balin Skull. There's a lot out there right now with Star Wars. The sounds like we're going to get an update on the strategy game at Japan. I, as much as people probably don't want to hear this, is it doesn't sound like we're going to get any sort of significant update for Star Wars Eclipse or Knights of the Old Republic from Star Wars Celebration. Still time for that to change, but at the moment, the docket really doesn't have anything slated for those two things, which is unfortunate because those are projects that people have a ton of anticipation for that just seem to be stuck in development at the moment. So, but I'd rather they get it right than
Oh, I agree.
get it wrong. Let's shift gears here and end the show with some wrestling. We are, if mathematics serve me correctly, we are about a week and a half or so away from the. Which Royal Rumble is this? What's the number on this Royal Rumble? We got to
First
be at
Rumble
like
was in 88.
80. Oh, God.
I think you can figure it out from there.
All right. Yeah, no, I got it now. So this will be the 37th Royal Rumble. That's a scary thought for multiple reasons. Um,
Damn,
the
I'm old.
37th Royal Rumble of all time. Let's start with the women's Royal Rumble, fellas. Who do you got going over? Give me this. Who would you book to win? Who do you think's going to win? Obviously, they're not the same thing. One, you could be placing some cheddar cheese down to win some of your mommy's used condoms, but uh, oh, right, that's a hockey term. Um, but at least one of our old sick hockey terms. Um, yeah, give me your prediction. Who do you think wins the Rumble for the women's? You know, who are the final two? But who would you book to win? Don't give me your 70-minute breakdown of how you booked the women's Royal Rumble, but feel free to be a little creative with it. We'll start with Johnny.
Well, to me, it's the answer to the both is the same. It's Charlotte and Charlotte. Um, because uh,
So
I'm gonna say
Charlotte's
it.
going to win and be the
Yeah.
finalist.
Well, it's to the question of who would I make book to be the winner and who's going to be the winner. It's Charlotte and it's Charlotte. I would both. That'd be the decision I'd make, and that's the decision they're going to make. Because I'm going to say it. As much as we speak great of the Triple H era of the WWE, he has done a piss poor job of making women superstars. There are 5 or 6 of them that are capable of main eventing a WrestleMania and having a quality story and match. And Charlotte is the only one that makes sense right now. She's coming off an injury. They started her hype videos last week, and it's the only story that makes sense to pair her with Tiffy because it's the match that fans have wanted for a long time. It's the storyline that makes the most sense, being they are both very similar um, in their stories, in their in their careers are very similar. It makes sense. It's the only story that makes sense. Um, Unless you want to do something crazy and stupid, there aren't a whole lot of other qualified candidates right now that could win the Royal Rumble. I mean, maybe Liv or Bailey, but you know, been there, done that. Same with Charlotte, but she's been gone, with injury for as long as she has. Her return's gonna get a pop because it's a return. She's gonna win the match, and it's gonna lead to quality match at WrestleMania because she is a quality wrestler. As for who's gonna be like the finals, it's your usual suspects. It's gonna be Bailey, Charlotte, probably Jade, and maybe Nia. That's most likely to be your final four.
Yeah, I could see them doing Jade Charlotte at the end. Kind of feels like Charlotte is. I'm not saying they're booking her the same heading into the match, but it feels like it has some of the same aura as that Triple H 2002 Rumble return.
If I start hearing Creed on Friday night, then I'll know exactly where we're going.
Randy, how about you, Ben? Johnny thinks it's going to be Charlotte, and he's predicting Charlotte.
So I'm pretty sure Charlotte's going to win just because, for the reasons Johnny said. She's coming back off injury. It's kind of like the perfect storm to have, Charlotte versus Tiffany Stratton for the belt. I think that has been the plan for a while now for them. What I like, granted, I'm not a huge Charlotte fan only because they pushed her so much before her injury. Like I just got tired of seeing her on my TV screen, but maybe this time recovering from injury, maybe that'll help. I wouldn't mind seeing Jade win it. I mean, she's not going to win it, but if it's me booking, I'd do Jade only because Jade versus Rhea would be quite the match because it's just two powerhouses going at it. But in terms of the final two, I'm going to go final four just because it's kind of hard to narrow it down to the final two. I think the final four are going to be Charlotte, Jade, probably more than likely Bailey, and I'm going to throw a wild card out there. And this is only because I'm going to speculate. So after the TNA pay-per-view this past weekend, it seemed like Jordy and Grace got her flowers from the locker room. I think she's on her. I think she's WWE bound, and I think
She was
she's
at
going to be.
DC today.
So I think she's going to be a surprise entrant in the Rumble, and that she's going to make it to the final four. So
Yeah, I think I don't think there are a lot of options for like women's winners when you look at how they've been booked up until now. Obviously saw SmackDown this week. Still have all of next week, but like I don't think you could definitively be like, well, this person or that person are the favorites to win. The men's you might go, oh well, there's Punk, Cena, McIntyre, Reigns, etc., Rollins. Um, the women's, like Johnny said, like I feel like it has to be Charlotte. Obviously Jade is still pretty green in the ring and presented like a star though. So I wouldn't be shocked if they
Ultimate
had.
Warrior. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I love the Ultimate Warrior, so fine with me.
He
So
was
did I.
great. And in the words of Bruce Pritchard, and then the bell rang.
I could see them having Jade lose to Charlotte at the end of the Rumble for sure. I think they had them stare down at a backstage segment once upon a time with I think like Triple H was in between the two. It was pretty early after Jade first got there. I could be wrong. Maybe
I'm trying to
Google.
remember when Charlotte got hurt.
I can't Google right now on my phone, but if I would, I'd just say Google Charlotte Flair, Jade Cargill, Triple H. I feel like they had a stare down, but maybe it was Jade staring someone else down. Thought it was Charlotte. Both would be in the returning spot too.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte's obviously significantly longer. Anything in regards to the picture?
There was a face-to-face last October
Right,
in a
so
backstage segment, so you're not imagining it. It did happen.
we'll see if anything happens on that front, but it certainly feels like some sort of massive event would have to happen for Charlotte to not win the Women's Royal Rumble this or next Saturday night. Which brings us to the Men's Rumble. Really excited for this because of the way they've built up for it in terms of this feud they seem to have going between all the main event stars. In terms of star power, you got Roman, Drew, Rollins, Punk, Cena, Sammy. I would assume Jey Uso is going to be in there. I'm assuming Jacob Fatu is going to be in the Rumble. Lots of star power. I would assume Randy Orton is going to come back during the Royal Rumble. Lots of star power in the Men's Rumble. I wouldn't say TV has made a clear cut who's going to win at this point. So Randy, I'll send it off to you first, man. If you're putting some betting money on who's winning, and who's Randy booking to win, who's your final two in both regards?
So I believe that Punk's actually going to win this one because that's one of the things he's never won. And obviously they want to get him set up for having, that Mania moment that has been eluding him, all things considered. As far as final two goes, I think it's going to be Punk and Sammy. I would actually, given what I feel overall, I would actually, me personally, I would put Sammy over, just because he's still relatively over, and it would be really cool to have him at least vie for a world title, since he's never had a world title shot yet.
Didn't he have one against Roman?
Well, I think, he had that title, but I think it's the WrestleMania moment, because he's never had a world title. So I think that's the whole thing of him going. So I was watching Raw, and they were talking about how he's never owned a world title, but he considered himself elite. So let's give him a shot. But again, I think it's going to Punk, just because it probably was going to go to Punk last year, to be perfectly honest, until he hurt himself. So I think they had to make a call on that one, just because.
I think it was Cody. Punk, I
It
think,
was never.
squashed.
It was
Yeah,
never
I think
Punk.
Punk
They would. I
squashed
don't.
that on the
There is.
Helwani interview.
I don't think there would ever be a situation where the Rumble finish would change on the fly because of injury, unless it's something so serious, like you'd have to break a neck to change the Rumble finish. I think, and Punk's injury was not that, because he finished the match. He
Yeah.
finished the match. If he was going to go
He
over,
toughed
he
it out.
would have gone over.
He knew it was hurt. He was hurt. He knew what had happened because he just suffered it on the
Yeah.
the other arm. But yeah, as far as I know, it was always Cody. Sorry, guys, lungs are failing me. But so you think Punk's gonna win,
Mm-hmm.
but you want Sammy to win.
Yeah.
Johnny, give it to me, man. Hit me with your best shot. Your prediction, your booking.
Who do I think is going to win? God, I hate to say it, because I really don't want it to. I really don't want them to be this simple. Is John Cena? I think they're going to give it to him. It will, I believe, tie the record with Austin for most Rumble wins. I believe this would be his third, which is something I could see them wanting to do. And obviously, it puts him on pace to break the record at Mania, which, of course, is a big moment. That said, I don't want that to happen. I don't. I don't think it's like everyone keeps saying Cena Mania. Cena has had a dozen Mania moments. He doesn't need this one. He doesn't
Thank
need the
you.
Mania moment for this. Like, yes, it'll be great, but I'm gonna be perfectly honest. You could build night one, SummerSlam, main event, John Cena chases the record one last time. A random pay-per-view in September or July or October. Any random pay-per-view could literally be built around, this is my last shot.
Don't you think there's a problem with, like, let's put up for our audience here, which is small at the moment, um, what the rumored stuff is, and like, for me, I'm very careful with who I source. It's taken me a little bit with the wrestling stuff to figure out who to listen to, who to not. Fightful's good. Ibu from, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Wrestle Purist is good. There are other notable people out there who are good. Mike Johnson, PW Insider, etc. But right now, the two rumored main events are Punk Roman and Cody Cena. Here's what I don't get on the Cody Cena one. I'm not saying that match can't happen. I think that match can happen. But why do we want John Cena to win the title? Like, I get it, it's his last WrestleMania. That's why I always thought it would have been better if he was doing this one and working all the way through to the next one. But why do we want him to achieve, the biggest thing he can achieve on this run at the beginning? Won't it just all be downhill from there if he wins the Rumble, goes to Mania, and beats Cody?
I always thought it was going to be SummerSlam for Cena to break the record.
I'd
Okay,
be
and I'll
fine with
say it. I
that.
still think the smartest decision is to pick a random pay-per-view that's not going to be built on something else to do it. You can build an entire pay-per-view around the one match, John Cena's last chance to break the record. You can build an entire event around that. You don't need to.
Would you save it to the end then?
Would I save it to the? I would probably save it until September, or October, somewhere in the fall. I think would be a good time to do it. Personally, you could do it in the summer, yes, but I think the fall gives you the best chance so that you can have the short run. Um, it will sort of take uh, some of the shine off the. No matter when you do there's going to be some shine off the apple because there's an end date. No matter whether it happens in April at WrestleMania or it happens on a random pay per view in September, there's an end date. That as great as John's story is, John Cena is the consummate professional. He is ending his career on his back looking at the lights. There's no other way his story ends because it's the right ending. For a guy who's business first, going out on your back is the way to do business. It's the way business has always been done. You go out on your back because it's the best way, to
It's so
to
funny you say that because the rumor is, at least from the Fightful Wrestle Purist side of things, is that he told Triple H that, look, we don't need to do this whole I come in, win the Rumble, main event mania. Why don't we see how it goes? We can have a gangbuster mania match against someone, but like Cena's very, let's hold off on declaring
mm,
record breaking title. And I hope Cena gets his way in regards to that because I don't know, guys. Like, to me, and again, this coming from a Punk fan, but like, if we're going to the Rumble here in a week and a half and your winners are Charlotte Flair and John Cena, it feels horrifically predictable.
Well, for the women's side of things, at this point I think it is. For the men's side, it really is still up in the air. We can sit there and say who we think is going to win all we want, but ultimately it's going to be who they feel is going to give us the best show at Mania for on the men's side of things, regardless. And it's going to be technically the same with the women. When you think about it, Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton for the strap, that's going to be one hell of a match. Uh, I would love to see somebody new for the men to have their shot at their Mania moment, but you know, if they really are going to go Punk, they go Punk. I don't see Cena winning it just because I think Cena's playing the long game for how he wants things to end, and he's always been that guy willing to put someone over ahead of him because he knows what's best for business, and that's kind of in his mindset every time he appears on television now. So
Johnny, just so we're clear, you said you think that they're going to do the Cena thing.
yes, I did
Okay,
because
who do you think he's throwing out at the end?
who is he throwing out at the end? Oh, I have no idea.
Is Punk going out the last two
No,
years in a row?
no, absolutely not. He's going out early, probably from Seth. I'm seeing sort of the was it 2003 Michaels Jericho.
well, I mean, after his promo last night, there's a bunch of guys who'd be gunning for him anyway.
I think whoever he's
I
programmed
did
with at
feel like the
Mania is who
promo
tosses
last
him.
night made me go, so Sammy's eliminating Punk. Okay, got it. Um, felt very choreographed for that. Sorry, my dog is trying to
It's all
take
good.
Jade's cake away. But who would you book then? Booker Johnny. Who's going over? Who's out last?
Who would I put over? I'd put over the guy who has been the most shafted by the Triple H run of booking to this point, Drew McIntyre,
I can get behind that.
because he deserves it. Every step of the way, He has been pushed down. He has been put aside. He's been pushed down. And he has been belittled, broken, and if I'm Drew McIntyre, you either strap a rocket to my back and give me something, or I'm 1 foot out the door. I'm not. I'm
He
not going to
probably
keep
shouldn't
doing
have
this.
signed a long-term extension last year.
I'm still 1 foot out the door. Like you'd see the drop in. I just don't want to be here anymore. I'm done. I'm done because it just you can only be pushed down so many times. The fans want to get behind him continually, time after time after time. He keeps getting these pushes, and the fans get behind him. They get excited. And then, nope, sorry, it's not going to happen for you. It's not your night, kid.
Well, we
They
have
built
rumors
Clash
of
at the
this.
Castle entirely around his shot. Nope, sorry, Roman's got to keep the belt here. They give him his moment at WrestleMania. Wins a belt. Sorry, but Punk's coming back and you're going to work with him and you're going to lose to him, so you're going to have the belt for 5 minutes. Sorry. Money in the Bank. You're going to win it, and then you're going to cash in, and oops, sorry, Punk's going to fuck you again. My bad. That has been Drew's story for the last 2 years. Oops, sorry, my bad. He needs this win, he needs the belt, and he needs to have a meaningful run, or there is no salvaging Drew McIntyre as a main eventer. None. Just stop trying. Because if you can't do it, or won't do it, stop trying to do it.
I love Drew.
This is that opportunity.
I think Drew's way over. I think he is a legitimate main eventer. I think he's one of the best wrestlers they have in that company. But he
He's
has
been putting
lost
out some
too
of the
much.
best stuff he's done
He
in
is.
years.
He is.
Even
But
the
if you
Jay
keep
loss
having
the
him
other
slip
night,
on
it
the
was
banana
like,
peel and lose at the end, people are going to stop believing.
even
They're
the
going to
Jay
stop
loss, I was
caring.
like, I don't think you need to have him lose there. Like, I know there's the rumors about having this Seth, Drew, Kevin Owens heel stable that
People
might
need to
be,
stop with that.
you know, I, I don't know. The problem is it's coming from reputable places, right? Like, I don't know if that's Triple H's big thing that he wants this big heel stable with the three. They certainly don't seem to pay attention to the roster split, that's for sure. But, we'll see what happens. If I were booking it, I would love to see Drew go to WrestleMania, kick Cody's head off, and win that belt. I I would I'd pay to see it. I think
For the
he's
record, I'd put him with Gunther, not Cody.
I think he's
Oh, that
earned it.
hard hitting match that Gunther and and then
I
Drew
think
have.
his title reign has been
Woo!
lousy and boring and not very effective, and it's unfortunate.
Wow, it's almost like putting Cody on every show has made the second world champion look stupid. Wait a minute. I've seen this play before.
I think also having him primarily just fight Damian Priest and Finn Balor and
Don't get me
and
started
and,
on Damian Priest.
and really no one else probably hasn't helped either. It's not enough of a variety.
Don't get me started on Damian Priest.
I like Gunther. By the way, I think he's good on the mic,
He,
good in the
he's
ring.
ho- he's how you build a heel without being like an absolute cheap piece of shit. I've loved his character and the fact that he goes out, does his thing, whoops the dude's ass in the end. You know, I love it. I just love the way he's a hard hitter too. I love just the fact that how hard he can hit somebody and just knock them on their ass. It's great.
I'm gonna put on my old school cap. Gunther is Nick Bockwinkel in a modern day era,
That's
and
really
I'm
old
here for
school.
it.
I had a big rubber wrestler of him. Um,
Nick Bockwinkel never had a big rubber guy.
I'm pretty sure I did.
No, Bockwinkel only never had the AWA Remco, which was
The
A
what?
little tiny. It was an AWA Remco figure, which we never had.
I don't know. I had a lot of the big guys.
Nick Bockwinkel wasn't in the
They
WWF
vanished.
until '87 when he was an agent. He had already retired.
Um, I guess, if I'm booking that Rumble on, next weekend, it's so hard to, get away from, insider reporting because they're often so accurate. But if I'm ignoring all of that and just booking it myself, yeah, I agree with Johnny in this regard. I'd have Drew McIntyre win the Rumble. I think he deserves it. I like, and for me, it's simple. I do want to see Punk versus Roman at Mania. I like the story that can be told with the Heyman thing. I think we're setting up for a Heyman Punk 2.0 run here in 2025, and I think it's going to come at the hands of Roman. But I also like Drew. I was a fan of Drew before the Punk feud, but then I got to really follow it all last year, and it was like, oh yeah, I really fucking dig this guy. This is cool. Um, so yeah, I'd have Drew go over. I don't know who I had, runner up or whatever, but yeah, I like Drew going over. Now, who do I think's gonna win? Prior to Punk throwing Sammy under the bus, I thought there was a pretty good chance that it was either Cena or Punk. Um, I'm hoping John Cena's logic wins out here, and we don't go all out at the beginning of the run and make the other 6 or 7 or 8 months of the run mean, jack all. Um, but if I'm betting money, I could see John Cena throwing CM Punk over the ropes at the end of the Royal Rumble. I don't want it to happen. I guess my next question though would be, say that happens. Um, there's no chance Cody's losing to Owens, right?
I think if Cody's going to lose the belt, it's going to be at Mania.
I
Kind
mean,
of felt that way
never say
too.
never, but odds are he holds it to Mania, at least.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if it's longer than that either. Um, that being said, because of all the long reigns lately, you know, having a couple short reigns here wouldn't be a bad thing. Get a couple of quick title movements over. My thing is, how do you get Punk to Roman and have it be a main event? I I'm struggling with that, and this is me as a Punk fan, Johnny. Is it just as simple as, well, they're two big stars and suck it, regardless if it's night one or night two?
If that's
Punk,
the pitch, can I
Punk,
just go ahead
Punk
and
calls it. Punk
say,
calls in his favor.
if that's the case, can I just
But
go ahead and
who
say,
has
hey,
the power to do that?
Phil, you remember WrestleMania 28? Shut the fuck up.
Jerk. Who do you have in 28?
28 was Taker.
29 was Taker.
Same difference.
But now I can't remember who he had in 28. Was it Jericho?
28 was Atlanta, so no. That was in Arizona. That was in Phoenix. That was 26. I don't remember. Those mid 21s, they all run together. I can't keep track of them.
Man, I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, how do you get the main event?
You put two stars together,
And just
and
call it, yeah.
it's a main event level match.
All right.
Doesn't matter if you're not on last.
Now, would you say Cody loses the belt to Owens at Rumble, and they still do Cody versus Cena at Mania? Could you do 2 nights of Star Power gets the main event despite titles not being involved?
Hold on. What? No. If there's no
So
belt involved, Cody and Cena are not anywhere near each other at Mania. It
No?
makes no
Okay.
sense. No.
All right. Randy, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, if you did do that, I mean, obviously it's probably not going to happen, but if you did do that, that would, to me, that opens up the door for having Sammy take on Owens for the title. If you if Owens ends up beating Cody. I feel like that kind of opens things up to where Sammy could win the Rumble and end up taking on Owens at WrestleMania for the belt.
As great a moment that would be, I'm like the moment inside me, I'd love it. I'd love the moment. It would be great for me as someone who was in attendance the first time Kevin and Sammy slash El Generico had their first match against each other. I was there in Toronto that night, the first time they locked up in a major setting. The crowd was electric. And that was, a few thousand people. Imagining that in front of close to 100,000 would be great. But A, it wouldn't be the same because it would not be as electric. And the matches would not be as good as I've seen them do because I've seen them have some bangers. In person, that match was amazing. I also watched, their Final Battle series 2 years in a row. They had a match at was it Super Card of Honor one year when he came back and when Kevin was champion. And that's not even touching their was Steen Wolf, I think, ladder match in PWG. Like, as great as the moment would be, the match would barely be a top 5 because it would be a WWE match. And as good as those are now, compared to the others I've seen those two have.
Just doesn't feel like it's main event level with all the other options on the card at this point. And I like both guys. I really like Kevin Owens, and Sammy has grown on me. So
I dare say if somehow that's the booking we get, congratulations, we fucked WrestleMania so much, neither night will be main evented by a title match. And
so you think if they did do the Cody drops the title before Mania, that they will go 2 main events without titles?
As fucked up as that is, yes.
I could never have seen that happening.
That'd be crazy.
I have a hard enough time seeing one without it. Like special circumstances, obviously, but
I think let me preface that. I think you'd have a good shot of Charlotte and Tiffy main eventing night 1.
I could see that.
So you would get a title match in one of the main events slots, but it would not be a men's. There'd be no male world title matches main eventing WrestleMania either night.
I guess that's the other thing I have an issue with here is, and we're going to get to AEW momentarily before we wrap up, but so it sounds like Punk Roman's going to happen at Mania. That seems to be the plan. Have a hard time seeing Roman be like, yeah, I'm okay with night 1 main event. I'm not doing night 2. Part of me sit here and goes, that Punk Roman match feels more like the night 2 main event than the night 1, but can it be night 2 without a title? You had time to get a title involved with it, and you're not going that route seemingly. And, I mean, I shouldn't say not. I think there's been title changes at Elimination Chamber before that makes a match a title match when we weren't expecting it to be. I can't think of any, but I'm positive it's happened before.
I think Jericho Punk. I think Jericho won the belt at Elimination Chamber that year.
Oh, shit. Didn't it happen once with Michaels and Taker too? Michaels cost.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the Jericho, second one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that might very well. That would make sense. That would have been 26. So yeah, Arizona.
So I shouldn't say there's not going to be a title involved with Punk versus Roman, but it doesn't seem like that's the direction they're heading.
I don't see Roman getting back in the title picture that soon. I think if there's a title somehow bootstrapped, hot-shotted into this angle, it's around Punk's waist.
And Punk almost goats Roman into Yeah, I could see an area where Punk wins at Elimination Chamber a title match, but Roman won the Rumble, and then Punk goes Roman into picking him as a better chance of having the main event at Mania, sort of thing, or getting that favor from Heyman. To me, Heyman can only help with the Mania main event favor if Roman is either champ or has pick. Like Heyman shouldn't really have the power to be like you're in the main event.
I think it would be more of a Punk and Roman is the match before the belt gets hot shotted in. I think that
Oh,
then
okay.
it becomes Punk cashing in the favor, as a, I want Roman, I want the main event. They've already got the match, but Paul makes it a main event by weaseling Punk into the title in the Elimination Chamber sort of situation.
Yeah, and they're making a big deal about the Elimination Chamber this year. It's at Rogers Center in Toronto, so big
No,
attendance.
thank you.
Oh yeah, well I'm not going either, so it makes two of us.
I thought
But
about it, and then I
yeah,
saw prices, and I'm like, fuck that.
how ridiculous!
I am not spending north of $200 to sit in the 500 section.
Oh
That is
God,
Hmm.
not happening.
that's
Damn.
insane.
That is the prices that
That's
that's
insanity.
that's first market prices.
Fuck.
That's $9 Blue Jays tickets.
Like if it
Good
was
lord.
200 500 section secondary market, that's a little more palatable. Like from a perspective of okay, the markup makes sense there. $200 plus to sit in the 500s as base? Fuck that noise.
I don't blame you.
I'd be more likely to go to SmackDown the night before at, Scotia, like
Do you
no
know if they're
thank you.
doing like a fan fest event for that?
Um Man Fest, no, but they are doing the shop thing, like the Fanatic store.
That I might do.
That was kind of cool to go to when I went to WrestleMania this past year. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff there.
That being said, with how I'm moving around these days, I'd have to feel infinitely better than I do now.
I don't think I'd want
Um,
to mark the crowds, like
yeah.
I don't think and the prices, just everything's marked up, and with it being a Canadian markup as well, you're looking at tickets or shirts that would normally be like $40, all of a sudden they're like 60, $70. Like, thanks, but no thanks.
Your guess on Punk Roman, do you think it's night one, night two?
I think night.
I guess it depends on if there's a title involved.
Yeah, I think that matters there. I think it also matters who wins the Rumble. If it is Cena, like we suspect, that's night two. That's your main event, no question. There's no brooking that. There's no debating that, regardless of whether or not Punk Roman somehow hotshots its way into being a title match. Um, I think it's night one, and I'm gonna say it right now. I don't think it's the main event.
No, I liked your idea of the women's title match between Charlotte and Tiffany being the main event for night one. And then you could have Punk and Roman the match leading up to that.
Boo.
If
I'm
there's no
sorry. I'm
title
trying
involved,
to
it makes
imagine.
it.
I'm trying to imagine Hunter telling Phil, "Yeah, you got Roman at Mania, and you're going on before a Charlotte match."
If the title's involved, obviously it's a different story. But if there's no title involved here, then it's got to be one hell of a stipulation to make it worth like putting it on as a main event.
Loser gets breakfast, or winner gets breakfast from Heyman.
Or winner gets Heyman. Period.
All right, guys, hear
Yeah.
me out. Paul Heyman on a pole.
They can bring back one of those WCW 3 level cages, and Heyman's trapped like all the way at the top, and you got to climb up at the top to get him.
Oh wow.
Punk seems to be putting his body on the line every time he gets on the ring at this point, so why not?
I think it'd be
Uh,
more like the. Also, congratulations, you just booked a 1987 NWA match, but I'd put him in the bottom cage, not the top one, and then you have to fight your way from the top down, like they did in the
Oh
in that
damn.
match in '87.
A long time to be a long way up. um, Anyways, let's shift gears to AEW. A couple things I want to touch on before we get off here. Help me out with this one, Johnny.
Mhm.
You've worked for an indie organization, a wrestling indie promotion.
Okay.
You've done stuff, I believe, behind the camera,
Yeah.
on the camera, done merchandise. Eh, I got positive with AEW I want to talk about, and I got negative. I want to get the negative out of the way now. Reports out there are that Swerve and Lashley are not going to fight one another again, as originally planned. I guess Swerve was going to get a chance to get his win back, and that's not going to happen. And Sean Ross Sapp and Ibu, I got to figure out how that guy pronounces his name. Both basically said they don't want to call it creative differences, but the two wrestlers see the business the wrong way. Or not the wrong way, different ways. They don't see it the same way. They don't see it in the same light. Um, for me, that feels awful lot. You know, feels very close to some of the reports we've seen about Malachi Black, Miro, others in the past. Um, how do you change that mentality of getting people to want a job? Like, you got a job, do you know? You're on guaranteed money.
It's a pickle. I mean, and I've seen it myself. You know,
Like, Lashley's been there for what, 10 minutes?
yeah, but it's a thing you're gonna run into when everyone has um an over exaggerated image of self. When everyone thinks they're the one, they never want to be number two. I think that's at least part of the problem here. That there are so many guys who, think they're the star in the program who don't want to look less than in any way, in any regard. And it's it's the nature of the beast, you know. Nobody wants to be the guy doing the job because nobody wants to lose. That's the business. You want to be the guy on top because the guy on top makes the more money. The guy going over makes more money. The guy moving on to the next best thing, bigger and better. You come out of your last program higher. But that's a mentality of sort of everyone. The stories of guys like Cena who can see the business in full are few and far between. There are very few guys who can see the business in such a way that realize, okay, I can lose here and it not hurt me.
Osprey's one of those guys because
Yeah,
he will put someone over.
absolutely. Will is absolutely one of those guys who can see the business for what it is because he realizes that I can't go over every night, but I can still go out there and put on a great show, and even in losing, I still come out better than when I went in, just like he did against Okada a couple weeks ago. In the at the end of the Continental Classic, he lost,
That was a
but he
great
came
match.
out of it looking great because he had a great match with a great opponent, and tonight just wasn't my night. And that's the thing where when you have guys who've been to the top of the mountain, they think they always belong at the top of the mountain. It's you don't want to come down from the top of the mountain. And that's where we are. They've done such a good job in AEW with Swerve of still keeping him on top, even though he hasn't been anywhere near the title picture pretty much since he lost the belt. You know, so he's still in programs that are important, and he's coming out of them on top until Lashley came along. And then they moved that over to Ricochet. And I don't, for me, I don't think there was long-term money in Lashley and Swerve. I don't think there ever was. Because it made more sense to me to just have that be the debut. Come in, get the win, make yourself a star, and that's it. Establish yourself in that tier and move on to the next thing. You don't need to come back to that right away.
I'm sure down the road they will, but for now, I think the storylines where both guys are right now are fine for them. I like the idea of the Hurt Syndicate going after the tag titles anyway. Gives them at least a foot in the door with a title, and that doesn't put Lashley in contention for any of the singles titles just yet until he's been there long enough to where he's like, I'm ready to go after a main event title.
And for me, I love Bobby. I think he's been a great talent, but he's not the guy. He never was the guy. He got great push. Like he's great as a role player, but he's not the focus. And that's fine. You need role players. That is, in my opinion, it is harder to be a good role player in wrestling than it is to be a star. Because stars come and stars go, but role players last a lifetime. Look at The Miz. Yep. He's not a star, but he is one of the best role players of the modern era, and his run has proven that. He can move up and down the card at will, and it works because he's a great role player. Bobby Lashley is a great role player. You can move him up. He can win a world title, but he's not going to be the guy main eventing long term.
I think Miz might have run out of his move ups at this point, but you're right. Your point stands. I think the elevator shaft is only going one way at this point.
Well, no, but you could still get a month-long program with Miz in a main event and have it be good because he can fill that role. But he's not going to be a guy you build, your 4 or 5 month plan on. And that's fine. You need those role players. Bobby is a role player, and he's a great one. Shelton is a role player, and he is an amazing one.
Yep.
And together, they work. Putting them in the tag title picture works. MVP being there works because he's a very underrated manager. He does his role, and he does it well.
Great on the mic, especially considering Lashley is not.
And can carry himself in the ring. So it's not like, it's not like a manager who you put him in the ring and he's a liability. MVP can go. But he doesn't need to. He suits his role. He knows when it's time to put the boots on, and he knows when it's time to put the suit on. And he's great at that. The problem is so many guys have been given the star treatment that don't want to stop being the star. And that's never going to work. It's never going to work.
Yes, I think it's time for the learning tree to get cut down.
I disagree. I think this is the best run he's had in 10 years.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Well, difference of opinion there. I think that dude's got go-away heat at this point.
I don't think the modern wrestling fan understands what go-away heat is anymore.
When Jericho's ready to tour with Fozzy again, they'll do something that'll he'll be off TV for a while. So
I think before the learning tree, you're right. It was time to do something different. But the learning tree has been fun because he's leaned into it. And it's gotten over and it's gotten fun.
It's got the kind of heat that he would expect Jericho to be able to get. So that's
exactly.
And the thing is he has two people with him that are so polar opposites of each other. At some point I figured Big Bill's going to be the one that's going to kind of step out against Jericho, but not until they're ready.
Keith. I think he's the guy with the upside.
I want to hear more about Keith on the microphone by himself at this point, because he's been given some. If he's doing just ad-libbing it, he's been doing a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. But if they're feeding him lines, just keep feeding him because his delivery is great. I'll give him that.
I've been a fan of Brian Keith for a long time. When he finally got his shot, I was so excited And then they put him with Jericho at first, and it's like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna be a thing. But then Jericho leaned into the learning tree and really leaned into it, and it works. And
Oh God.
it's so awful that it's good. It's intentionally bad, and that's why it's working.
Yeah, it is. You know, Jericho's like, okay, you guys want to think this sucks? Well, wait till you see what I do next, and that's
You
pretty much
ain't
what he's doing.
seen nothing yet.
It is
But he
too late
still
for
goes
me
out
to.
there and delivers.
It's too late for me to start drinking tonight, but you two were driving me to it. Um, last but not least, got to be quick with this one though, because I do got to get going. Um, how do we feel about the presentation of AEW on TV now that they're finally starting to book smaller venues?
I
Johnny,
think.
how do you think it
Okay,
looks? Oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead. How do you think it looks
I
on
was.
TV, man?
I think it's been great because the smaller venues allows for the crowd reactions to actually have meaning. Uh, they booked so many big places last year that when they didn't sell out or even sell half, it was you'd get your crowd reactions, but just nowhere near what you would expect from a wrestling event. Now that they're doing the small venues, you get these loud pops and cheers and people standing on their feet, and it's like it actually feels really exciting, and I've been enjoying it. The fact that they're just paring it down and going back to basics and giving us the small venues so that you can feel it feels more intimate and you actually feel like it's a big deal, even though it's just a smaller venue.
Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I like the smaller venues. For TV, I think that's always worked well. If you go back and look at this is the thing that pisses me off about pro wrestling fans. We talk about the smaller venue like, oh, it's a smaller venue. It sucks. It's awful. My gut reaction is, where was Monday Night Raw being held in 1999? Spoiler alert, it wasn't the 17,000 seat stadium. It was the
No, not
10,000
often.
seat college stadium. They
Mm-hmm.
were running out of like the Penn State, uh, where the Penn State Nittany Lions play college basketball. They were running out of fucking Kentucky. Like they were running out of these small 7 to 10,000 seat venues, and the reactions were some of the greatest we've ever seen in an era at its peak. Where yeah, you can go ahead and you can sell 50, 60,000 fans and pump them in at WrestleMania, and you can have your 15,000 seat, you know, NHL, NBA stadium for your pay per views. But TV, you're looking at 5 to 7,000 fans, and it's peak atmosphere because every person wants to be there, every person is excited to be there, and every person is loud. That's why the crowd reactions were so pivotal in the Attitude Era. Compare them to today, where unless you're in a market where you're not very often, like the European markets or the Canadian markets, you don't get the reactions you get in the American market because, eh, you know?
It's a rare occurrence when AEW is doing 5 to 7,000 for their weekly shows at this point, but I think it looks way better watching it on TV now. Obviously, they just did Hammerstein not too long ago.
December.
Uh, Um, they've done other smaller venues like that. They had that stay at that place in, I think it was Texas, but
Yep.
I can't remember.
Last July
Yeah,
before All In.
they just did one at another venue that reminded me of Hammerstein, but isn't Hammerstein.
The one in Cincinnati where they
Yeah,
just did
yeah,
last week.
the Hobbs Mosley one.
They're going
Um,
back to Daly's place, which is another smaller
I
venue.
I like those venues. I think that's good for them. I think it's good for their TV appeal because I don't think it's good when you go to one of these. They're not even trying to do or weren't even trying to do like the 20,000 seater hockey NBA arena for a long time. They were going for like the 12,000 seat venue. I think it's a really bad look when you have 2,000 people show up for a 13,000 seat venue and you try your best to make the production not show that stuff, but it ends up getting shown during it. I think the smaller venue just makes it look more intimate, makes you feel like you want to be there. I think it's the right move for the company, in my opinion. You know, if they get hot again, then start to move back up to those other venues. But in the meantime, go for the smaller, more intimate venue. I think a lot of them have like a unique look to them too, so they can be appealing on TV. I've always liked the look of Daly's place, and Hammerstein's always been one of my favorites.
Oh, absolutely.
I I prefer old Hammerstein to new Hammerstein. Having seen it,
There's definitely
last
a
month.
difference.
Having seen it last month with AEW and Final Battle there, and then just the other night, the GCW versus the People versus GCW was in Hammerstein, and it's too bright now. Like it's a weird thing to say, but the colors are too bright. It looks blah in wrestling lighting because it's too bright. It used to be darker and more grunge esque. Back when ECW was running there in their prime, the colors were more muted. When Ring of Honor was running there consistently, the colors were more muted. But it's too bright at Hammerstein now. I'm not a fan. And they've changed the layout a little bit of it. You can see when you're looking at it, it looks weirder and less. You know,
Naked Eye might not even think it's the same venue.
yeah, it looks more. It looks more like the Manhattan Center, which, if you know the difference, you're an old
Hmm.
school wrestling fan, like where Raw was in the
Raw,
early
yeah.
days. Yeah, it looks more like the Manhattan Center than it does the Hammerstein Ballroom at this point, which is not the look you want, for my opinion.
I just think why show a 70% empty venue on TV every week, which, by the way, costs more to rent too. When you can go to something smaller, more intimate, that looks better, makes it feel bigger, makes it feel more filled. I think they needed to do this for a long time, and I think since they've done it, they've been better off for it.
I agree.
I think on next week's episode we may approach All In a little bit and talk about what we think might main event that show. I think most people already have a feeling what might main event that show, but we'll talk about that. And, we'll see what happens in terms of Star Wars news between now and then. It's been a wild couple of weeks in terms of Star Wars news, and we'll see if any more comes. Big thanks to Johnny and Randy for doing this. 2 hours, 22 minutes, but fun, informative episode. There were a lot of really good talking points, and uh, I'm gonna have fun time stamping this one because I think there are a lot of discussions worth listening to on here. Randy, where can everybody find you at, man? What do you got going on?
So you can on X, you can find me at Giggity Giles, and as I said before, with the NFL playoffs in full swing, Sports Brews recording weekly. We should be recording soon, and our episode is up on on Podbean and other pod catchers out there. Just Google Sports and Brew, and you should find us no problem.
Johnny, how about you, man?
Oh, here, there, and everywhere. Like I said, hopefully back on Twitch next week. I think is what I'm aiming for. But yeah, here, there, everywhere.
We got various things coming up in terms of content on the channel. We're just getting back into the swing of things. Going to be continuing our Supernatural Rewatch podcast. We'll have Johnny and Randy on for select episodes of that with Tommy and I. Um, really still want to try to do something with Smallville. Really itching to watch it again. It's been a little over a year for me now. That being said, I think Smallville just got taken off or is about to get taken off of Prime, so that's not good. But yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all. Check us out over on Patreon, getting a new revamped program over there where you might be able to find new content that we will be producing monthly over there. Um, sorry. Um, got distracted. But anyways, Anybody else have anything they want to add, or are we good?
Good to go.
All right, that'll do it for this week. Have a great week, everybody. Don't forget to check out channel sponsors. Ryan over at Colleague Nation, Jesse at Jesse's Storytime Spectacular, Jason over at Backtrack Cinema, and our buddy Matt. Big thanks to Randy and Johnny for doing this tonight. We'll see you next time when the Empire calls.